You also put in here something that I know you're pretty passionate about. You don't like when the garage is attached, per se, to the house.
Correct.
And then you knew that in my house on Curlian, we had taken our garage out and made it into a family room. We call it the Taj garage.
The Taj garage.
And so what you do in some of your designs, you've done it here, is you have the garage, it's a 3-car garage in a courtyard area, and it's tied with the mudroom and laundry room leading into the house.
Yes, so I do that. You'll see that as a pretty common theme. And you know, I think what you're talking about is what anyone should and can expect when they're working with a professional, when they're working with an architect or a good designer. I mean, that's what we are taught to do in our profession, is the listening, interpretation, and then that creativity that we've talked about before, that space between required elements and wanted elements, that there's that gap in there in which the creativity happens. So, yeah, I feel very strongly about garages and houses for the main reason, when you look at a garage, even on this plan that we have here, the 3-car garage, which is typical these days, occupies well over 1/3 of the footprint of this home. So when you take a building that large, which is a place simply to store your cars and other stuff, and you push it up against the house, you immediately lose the ability to bring light, ventilation, all those very critical elements that I consider critical to a good living space. You cut them out, you lose it, because you attach this garage right to, you know, and I know there are a lot of people who think that I'm nuts about this. People want to be able to walk straight from their garage straight into the house. Well, you do in a sense. Yeah, you walk into the mudroom, past the laundry, and then into the house. So this connector that separates these two buildings and gives you the light and the air and the ventilation to the home is highly functional. So not only do you pass through the space as you come in from the garage, you can also access the mudroom from outside.
Right.
So if you're out working in the yard and so on. So yes, it is a theme that recurs in my design. I think a lot of my colleagues and fellow professionals, if given the space, would probably agree with me about the impact of a garage. Obviously, if you're on a tight site, in an urban site, that's different. And there are times when you have no option. You'd also talked about not driving in facing the garage doors, which I happen to agree with wholeheartedly. So taking the garage and putting it at right angles to the main home does create this two sides of a motor court, if you will. And I think it sets off the house very nicely. When you were talking about your sense of grandeur, or the sense of arrival, the picture that we have up right now is standing in the driveway looking at the home. And so we're looking at basically big house, for want of a better reason, or a better word I should say. And you can see the story and a half of big house. And it's a very simple form. It's a rectangle with a very simple roof, but it picks up on some of those roof lines, those hip roofs that you liked on that Florida house.
Yeah, and you don't often
Spanish
see
style.
that on this kind of...
No. And I think it works very nicely. So you've got a story and a half of volume in this room, which I think fits you and suits you and your personality.
You captured it. You captured it perfectly. You're a genius. I love it. What do we do next?
What we do next is, well, today obviously was to get your reaction to the forms. You can see I've taken, little house, in other words, your suite, your wing, and it steps down slightly, so it still gives big house that sort of prominence. So today, what I wanted to talk about was just, is the location of things work for you? Is the flow, when you look at that plan, does that feel comfortable? If you imagine yourself either walking in the front door or walking in from the garage, your dad living in the space, you living in the space. You talked about creating a little sense of mystery, and so you see in the connection from the living room to your bedroom wing is tucked around the side of the fireplace. So it's right there, and so it's not immediately visible. So there's this archway that draws you into your wing.
Oh, I like that.
So there's a sense of what's over there.
Right.
All right. And then right next to that you can see I've pulled a bay window, a large bay window, which is also south facing, and created a separate area adjacent to the main seating area that is gathered around the fireplace. Now, I feel very strongly from doing this for many years, a sitting area should never exceed 14 by 14 feet to the back of the furniture.
Okay.
Beyond that, you lose an intimacy, and it's very hard to have a conversation. And you you end up with too much space in between coffee tables and people, and it's difficult. So that rectangle that I'm showing in front of the fireplace is a 14 by 14 space.
Mm-hmm.
So then next to that is a more intimate space that my plan would be to drop the ceiling over that area in front of that bay window, and I called it a reading area because it's going to get south light. I think it's a perfect curl up on the bay window with a book, or sit in a couple of nice chairs, or if there is just 2 or 3 of you, it's a more intimate place to sit in a very large room.
I have all my rooms. I have exactly what I asked him for. Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group, and you can visit dfdgonline.com. And we're going to be posting this up there as well, apparently.
We are.
As he's continuing to make this. Now the next step is windows, right?
The detail, the treatment, and so on.
That's where I'm going to get picky, I'm just warning you. So.
Well, I'm thrilled. I'm showing you an image right now, which is how I would anticipate and plan to incorporate the balcony view. I could see it in your eyes and then hear it in your voice that a balcony was something very precious to you, and would have a great feel, and especially looking out into the woods in this instance. So what I've done here, proposed, is around and below the master bedroom, as I've scooped out the ground extensively and exposed completely 2 walls of the lower level.
Oh,
so
wow.
Not only does that we have south light coming down the grand stair into the lower level, but we have 2 great lengths, probably about 30 feet of wall that is actually fully exposed.
Oh, I love it.
By creating this giant sloped garden, if you will, that slopes down towards and creates an area on the west and on the north. So
we don't have any water issues out there, do we?
No.
Okay.
No, and in fact, I can tell you that actually I stole this from my own house, because this is what I did for my guest suite downstairs, the way I used to get daylight down there and make it not feel like a basement room. Well, of course, what that does allows me to put a balcony off your bedroom.
Okay.
All right. So that also, we managed to get that element into it.
Beautiful.
And, all right.
It's going to be gorgeous. All right, we're going to continue this in our next episode here of Damian on Design on Ann Arbor's Talk Station, 1290 WLBY. I absolutely love it. I think it's perfect.
So thrilled.
I can't believe, I mean, we're doing this as a way to teach people how that you take a concept you think about in your mind and bring it to life through design and the beautiful work that Damian Farrell has done. But I'm going to make this house. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but I am going to make this house. It is going to be built.
Well, I love it. I am very pleased with the number of things that I feel we were able to include and incorporate with the challenges of a rural setting,
beautiful,
a farm environment, all the things that you love.
Damian, thank you very much. It's gorgeous.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Really lovely to see the program you use for this too. And folks, you can go to youtube.com. If you Google Lucy Ann Lance or Damian Farrell, it'll come up and you can see these designs and the video that we've been taking with this. The lovely Julianne Williams is the producer of it. We appreciate that. And our thanks also to Dean Erskine from Lance and Erskine Communications. And Damian, I know the past week you gave another great tour at Mott Children's Hospital.
Yes.
You actually had an artist there?
We had another artist. You know, we had Paul Valinsky on last week's show, right? So one of our guests was John Kotarski, who is one of our clients. And John knows Jim Cogswell very well. Jim did the Jack and the Beanstalk applique, I guess you would call it, on the west facade of the clinic tower.
You see this from the outside. You see it from inside too, but outside it tells the story.
It tells the story. So you see it floor by floor, which is what you and I saw, was pieces of it.
That's floor by floor.
Floor by floor. And then if you're outside, floor by floor, if you're outside, you see the whole thing. So it's 9 stories.
Right.
I think it's 9 stories, 9 or 7 stories of Jack and the Beanstalk with a lot of other abstract details. And it's on a corridor that is curved, and it was so moving to have him there, and he was so passionate. He is so passionate. And he talked about how the architecture curved and how these giant columns, which were structural, created these bays along his piece of work. And I'm going to guess that it's probably 75 to 80 foot long, that hallway, and then 7 stories high, 7 levels. And so he talks about how the shadows that come through in the afternoon, they change very slowly, and we stood there for a while. So and watched this happen. So he changed, the space changed. So he was, in his own way, talking about a healing environment, that it wasn't just a static environment. The shadows changed, the intensity of the color changed. It went across the floor and up onto the walls. And then at nighttime, that whole wall lights up. So at night, it's something worth going and seeing on its own. So it's this environment that changes.
Well, and the artist taking that into consideration when he's putting this together.
So while he's talking about the art, he's also, I think without realizing, and then I mentioned to him, actually talking about a healing environment.
Yeah.
Because it's not static.
Right.
It's active. It's colorful. It's it's beautiful.
I think that's a really critical element, because last week Paul Valinsky was talking about how he had to go and see the space to know what he was doing, and then notice that these cans that the workers were drinking, the iced tea cans, were abandoned, and that's what he decided to use for his butterfly installation. So it's just the synergy of how all of that comes together when people think about art and design and what it plays in our lives. It is very important. And I know Ann Arbor's been going back and forth on this as to how these kinds of things are funded with the Percent for Art program that the city of Ann Arbor has, and there are people that don't believe that tax dollars or city money should go to that, but there is a place for this, and I really salute people that, like the permanent collection at Mott Hospital, it took a lot of private money and other money that was donated for these kinds of things to happen, and we can't take that for granted.
No, it's such an integral part of making people feel well and well-being, and so another plug, please go buy your tickets for the event on Main to support this extraordinary place we have here in Ann Arbor. So 21st of June, I believe it is, Thursday. Thursday, 21st of June. Please go, go online, get your tickets for the event on Main. This is a world-class place that's all about families.
And if you Google event on Main, it comes up as well, and you can get your ticket information. Damian, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I'll tell you, the house you are building for me is definitely a healing environment. I'm feeling good in that thing. Love you, thank you. Damian Farrell with Damian Farrell Design Group, and it's Damian on Design each Saturday here on the Lucy Ann Lance Show, and you're listening to Ann Arbor's Talk Station, 1290 WLBY.